Oh, it comes with an announcement now. Wow.
Yeah, that's new. Interesting.
Okay. So for news, we have tomorrow the Envirothon results will come out.
Oh,
So hover over your NHACD website on the Envirothon part, and the results will pop up sometime tomorrow. Ian Hanley has been hired as the new executive director of the State Conservation Committee. He starts Friday, and there'll be a steering committee meeting the week after to get him, point him, I guess, to show him where all the bathrooms are and all the important things that you need to start a job that hasn't been filled for 11 years. So there's a big vacuum there that he's got to fill. And then Carroll County on Monday has Catherine Dufall. Did I say that right? And so we're looking forward to meeting with her. I will be contacting her on the second day to talk about the legislative tour that's going to happen and what kind of assistance you guys need from us down here in the south, in the west of you. So we're very happy to work with that. And so I will turn this over now to Chris.
sure. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for a nice June evening here indoors on Zoom. Thank you very much. Our first guest tonight is Peter Clark. He's the Special Assistant for Constituent Services. He's been in that role for nearly 10 years for Senator Jeanne Shaheen. And Peter's background includes his Bachelor of Arts degree from St. Anselm's College in politics. He earned that in 2012. And it looks like he's been quite dedicated and has a lot of experience to bring us from Washington in his various roles that he's had there. So let's look forward to Peter. Thank you for being part of us and part of this constituent service contingent right here. We really appreciate your time.
Oh, sure. Well, thank you all for having me. I'm happy to be here and talking about some of the bills that Senator Shaheen is working on. And I know that there was particular interest in bills that have components about carbon sequestration. So I have two bills today that Senator Shaheen is directly involved as either a co-sponsor or the primary sponsor, and then two other bills that our office didn't originate from our office, but certainly have been introduced in the Senate and that our office in our team in DC, our legislative team, are reviewing. Before I get to those, though, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the Farm Bill. As I'm sure you all know, the last Farm Bill was passed in 2018. Those are 5-year bills, so we will have to pass the next one by 2023. We haven't heard too much about when the next kind of negotiations on the next Farm Bill will start. It probably won't be this year in 2021. I think it will probably be towards the end of 2022 or beginning of 2023 when those negotiations really start in earnest. So we will be sure to keep you all updated if we do start to hear rumblings about the Farm Bill and those next series of negotiations, because I'm sure we will be in close contact when that happens. But certainly that is kind of a quick update on kind of where the Farm Bill is now. So just wanted to make sure to put that out there, and also wanted to make sure that everyone knew that the appropriations process is starting up for this year. The president's budget usually comes out a little bit earlier, and that's kind of the informal kickoff for the appropriations process, kind of with the turnover of administrations in those years. It's always a little bit later as the new administration gets up and running. So that process is starting. I know in the past we have gotten programmatic requests from the conservation districts in the commission. So, and I know we've gotten some for this year, but if folks do have programmatic requests, please don't hesitate to get them to our office. You can either email them to me directly. We also have a website. It's an email. It's appropriations@shaheen.senate.gov, where you can email any appropriations requests that you might have. So getting into some of the bills that have to do with carbon sequestration, I'll start with some of the bills that Senator Shaheen is directly involved with. And I'm going to start with the Growing Climate Solutions Act. And I'm starting with this because it actually has passed through committee. It passed unanimously on a bipartisan vote through the Senate Agriculture Committee. And we're hoping that this is a bill that we could see signed into law during this session of Congress. And basically, this bill would create a certification program at the USDA to help solve technical entry barriers that both farmers and forest landowners see that prevent them from participating in carbon credit markets. These issues usually include lack of access to reliable information about the markets, and then also lack of access to qualified technical assistance providers, and then credit protocol verifiers. So what this bill would do is it would establish a greenhouse gas technical assistance provider at the USDA, and also a third-party verifier certification program, so that third-party entities could become USDA certified to provide those services to address kind of these lack of information and lack of access issues. And they will, that those programs will make sure that there is expertise in both farming expertise and forest and landowner management expertise there, so that folks that haven't had access or have not had the information to have quality access to these carbon credit markets will have more of a door to get into these programs and take advantage of them, so that they, their sustainable practices and kind of create more incentive for sustainable practices that sequester carbon, in a more effective way, and can get the incentives from that. It would also set up a website, a kind of a one-stop website to help with that lack of information, that lack of information problem as well. So like I said, that bill has passed through the Senate Agriculture Committee, passed unanimously. All Democrats and all Republicans on that committee did vote for it. So we are hoping that bill will get over the finish line in this session of Congress. The other one that Senator Shaheen is the primary sponsor on, with Senator Shelley Moore Capito, she's a Republican of West Virginia, is the Forest Incentives Program Act. And this is a bill that would establish an incentive program at the USDA that would allow eligible forest landowners to enter into long-term contracts and conservation easements to, when they adopt conservation practices that sequester carbon and are proven to deliver emissions reductions. And so there's some, a lot of fine text of this bill, and I will make sure that you all have the bill, the text after, but really that kind of the eligible practices that you can use that, this bill would cover. Let me just see if I can find it real quick, would be, the afforestation on non-forested lands, such as marginal crop or pasture land, reforestation of forest land impacted by wildfire, pests, wind, improved forest management, with appropriate crediting for carbon benefits of harvested wood products, and then other practices as the Secretary of Agriculture deems appropriate. The carbon contracts, they would be 15 or 30-year contracts, and also there would be the option for conservation easements as well. And that bill also actually a second part would be that it would also create financial incentives for commercial building to use kind of biological products instead of more kind of energy intensive, types of products for commercial buildings. So that is one that Senator Shaheen is the primary sponsor of. It is a bipartisan bill with Senator Capito of West Virginia, and we're hoping that gains movement as well in the Agriculture Committee. So I wanted to highlight two other bills that Senator Shaheen is not involved directly with, but certainly that our team is reviewing and have been introduced in the Senate. The first bill was introduced by both the chairman and ranking member of the Agriculture Committee in the Senate, Senator Debbie Stabenow, a Democrat of Michigan, and Senator Braun, who is a Republican of Indiana. And this is the Rural Forest Market Act. And this bill would provide a federal loan guarantee to support innovative projects that sequester carbon and help small forest owners develop climate solutions and address environmental challenges by adopting more sustainable land management activities. And so this bill was just recently introduced. So they haven't opened it for co-sponsors yet, and kind of there hasn't been any hearings in the Agriculture Committee on the bill yet, but it really is meant to help kind of with the high upfront costs that folks, forest owners and farmers might experience as they try to adopt more sustainable practices. And that, that tries to help by implementing a rural forest market incentive program to help with those costs. So that is a bill, like I said, it has been introduced by both the chairman and the ranking members. So we expect that bill will have a hearing in the Agriculture Committee and we'll get a vote, and then we'll see what happens with the full Senate once that goes through. And then the last bill that I wanted to highlight is a bill from Senator Booker of New Jersey, a Democrat of New Jersey, and it's called the Climate Stewardship Act. It's similar to a bill that he introduced in the last session of Congress last year. And basically it has a lot of components, so I won't go through them all. I'll make sure to send you the text of the bill, but it would, that bill, if passed, would mandate a planting of over 1.6 billion trees by the year 2030, 400 million, which would be in urban areas, and then 6.5 billion trees by 2050. It would provide tens of billions of dollars for supplemental funding for the USDA's working land conservation programs and new funding for other programs. At this point, it has been introduced, but it is another bill that has just recently been introduced, so it has not had a hearing or any votes at this point. But like I said, there are a lot of components, but some that I think might be of interest to you all is that, it would put an additional $100 million for the community forest and open space program. It would establish a forest stewardship pilot program. It would establish a new civilian conservation corps, among other things. And I'll make sure that you all get the text of the bill there. And Senator Shaheen is certainly reviewing this bill as it's newly introduced, and we'll keep you updated on actions that she takes on this bill as well. There is no Republican support on this bill as of yet. So we will see what happens with it. And we, as you all know, we are in a 50-50 Senate. So, a bill that doesn't have Republican support, the margins are very tight there, but certainly it's a newly introduced bill. So we'll see what happens over the next few months with that bill as well. So that was a lot of information. I'm happy to answer the questions that I can. A lot of unknowns still without some of these bills having hearings yet, but certainly happy to answer questions. And if I can't answer them today, happy to take them back and get you answers when we have the information or when the hearings and votes take place.
I have a few.
Sure.
Who's going to admit it? What if these bills pass
Mhm.
and get signed? Which government organization is going to administer it?
So most of the bills, I think, the Growing Climate Solutions Act, the Forest Incentives Program Act, and then the Rural Forest Markets Act, those are all, it looks like the USDA, the US Department of Agriculture, would have primary jurisdiction over implementing many of the components of those bills. I think probably with Senator Booker's bill, that might be a bill that has kind of cross jurisdiction. So that might, depending on what part of the bill it is, could be different kind of agencies. I think still a lot of those components, if passed, would probably be with the Department of Agriculture as well. But I think you could see parts, depending on kind of what a bill, if it passed, what it kind of looked like after the whole kind of, committee hearings and amendment process and everything. There might be parts in, say, the Department of Interior, for example, and EPA could have parts as well. I think it's too early to tell really there without kind of a full Senate floor kind of process there. But probably most of it would be the U.S. Department of Agriculture.
We've been talking about trying to be the third party that would review how much carbon's going in the soil. And the first program you mentioned tonight, it seems like there needs to be there's a certification process that would take place. So our staff would have to become certified for us.
Right. So that bill, if passed, that would set up a third party kind of verification certification, a verifier certification. So I think depending on how kind of, if that bill were to pass, the USDA would write implementation rules and guidelines as to kind of what entities could apply to become verified as USDA certified in verifying these things. So I think that if that comes about, then that will be a process that USDA will implement and make clear, and there'll be a process for applying for that and becoming certified.
Will there be a funding source for that training, or would that be an out-of-pocket expense?
I don't know that answer as of yet.
Anybody else have questions?
Yes, Peter. I think one of the biggest problems with carbon sequestration and forestry is economy of scale, in that today only very large landowners are going to attract any interest, and there's the average landowner is 40 acres or less. In the private area. Is there anybody talking about a way to make these programs work for small landowners?
That's a great point, and I haven't seen much on that particular question, but let me bring it back to my legislative counterparts in Washington and see if they've heard of anything that might have touched that topic, and I can be sure to follow up with you.
Yeah, I think there are ways to do it. There's definitely an issue in being able to afford to manage a program like that with a lot of small landowners.
Right.
But they may be able to congregate into cooperatives of some kind, which could make it work. And the use of drone technology, the use of satellite imagery could deal with a lot of the expensive part of certification.
No, those are great points. And like I said, let me see if I can get you more information or see if there's anything out there that I don't know about at this point, and I can be sure to follow up.
Okay, thanks.
Hey, Peter. My name is Jessie Wright. I'm a staff person at the New Hampshire Association of Conservation Districts. I have not a question, but a comment that's been rolling around in the back of my head at the conservation districts across the state. And we work closely with NRCS and our farmers and forest landowners. And I keep thinking about young people in New Hampshire and how we encourage them to become farmers here. As we all know, the age of the farmer is getting rapidly older.
Right.
And one of the things that I've been rolling around in the back of my head is, how can we encourage young folks to become farmers and pursue their education at UNH and other land-grant universities? I would love to see farmers added into the public service loan forgiveness action that's happening. If folks have the right types of loans and they're in public service, and they can have some of their student loan debt forgiven. Nurses, police officers, the like. And I think farmers as land stewards do just as much work for the rest of us as nurses and police officers. So if it ever was possible to have farmers added into that list, I think it could do a great deal for us rural states to encourage young folks to pursue their education and then settle back into our rural economy. So just a plug, perhaps a selfish plug, to have more young folks be here in New Hampshire, but also we've got to do all our best to keep farmers on the land and the new generation back. So if that could ever happen, I'd be super grateful.
Yeah, that's a really interesting idea, and one that I've not heard before. And I think especially here in New Hampshire, where we have UNH as a land grant, university with a strong program in farming and dairy and all of that. That's something that we should really think about. So I can certainly flag that for Senator Shaheen, and I think she will also find that a very interesting idea, and our legislative team, and see what might be possible.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you. What kind of assistance can we give the senator when in the hearings to make it move?
Sure. Well, I think, it was always the most helpful for us, and I think for the entire Senate, is having real kind of on the ground in New Hampshire, anecdotes or stories or support, kind of support for these legislations, and making clear why they would be helpful for New Hampshire. So like I said, I will make sure to get you kind of the text of all these bills that I spoke of today, so you can take a deeper look. And certainly if you think they're going to be helpful, or if there's specific instances in New Hampshire that really pop to mind as something that a bill could really help, please do send those our way, so that we have them, so we can keep a bank of stories, so that when there are hearings or there are votes on the Senate floor, Senator Shaheen can point to those stories and make sure people know what the impact will be. And I also think that making sure that your kind of counterparts in other states as well, that these bills are on their radars as well, so that they can advocate with their senators and members of Congress as well.
Thank you.
I guess I'd put a wish list item out there. Certainly, maybe not the same scale as Jesse's, because I thought that was a really clever idea. And I so applaud farmers for having such responsibility to be doing what they're doing with food and food security and that things, about those topics. But my wish list would be, how could we go about increasing our chances to win the great lottery of having people like you or other people in the senator's staff or the senator at some kind of an event that we might be doing?
Sure. Well, certainly, please do make sure that we know about all of the events that you're holding, and so that we have it on our radar. I am always happy to join meetings like this, or as you get back to in-person events, join those when you have them as well. I think that with Senator spending a lot of her time in Washington, it's a little bit more difficult, but definitely make sure you flag those requests and those events for me, so I can make sure to get it to her scheduling team. In case those events happen at a time when Senator Shaheen's either here in New Hampshire, or if they're virtual, maybe there'll be a time when she's not in a committee hearing or not voting. So it's always good for us to know about them, and then we can make sure to keep them on our radar.
Thank you.
Yes. But I'm certainly happy to attend whenever I can, any events virtually or in person.
Beautiful to hear, because your expertise is certainly welcome and your approachability is palpable through Zoom. So thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments, or get your wish on the wish list like Jesse did, or as I just posed? Any other comments?
And I just will make one more plug for those appropriations requests. If you have them, make sure to send them to us. Senator Shaheen, every year, she fights hard to make sure we're getting as much funding for conservation programs as possible. I know here in New Hampshire, she fights hard to make sure NRCS has the funding that they need to continue to provide the conservation services that they so ably provide. So that's something that's going to continue to be her priority. So if you have those requests, please make sure to send them in. And certainly also our congressionally directed spending or earmarks. They have been brought back for fiscal year 22. Our deadline has passed. I think there were some requests from some of the conservation districts, but certainly do keep that in mind for next year. We hope that those will come back again next year. So nonprofits and municipalities are qualify to put in congressionally directed spending requests. So think about those for next year as well.
Thank you. Anything else before Peter is free to go? We really appreciate this amount of time from you and our input. And I think it's always easier now to talk or to send emails when we're putting names and faces together and feel like we've met you in some way through this. And I know that Dick had seen you and heard you at another event. So the networking opportunities through Zoom are really wonderful these days. So.
Yes, and please don't hesitate to reach out if you think that myself or our office can be of any assistance.
Thank you. Anything else? Going, gone.
Thanks, Peter.
Thank you all.
Our next guest tonight for this Zoom In on Conservation program is Chris Shadler. Am I pronouncing that or Shadler? Shadler?
No, it's Shadler.
Shadler, that was my second guess. It was my gut reaction, but my second out loud guess. So I'm sorry we didn't get to speak before this because that's a 101 to pronounce your guest name correctly. I was very impressed learning more about you that back in the 70s, you had volunteered in Battleground, Indiana with the North American Wildlife Park Foundation, graduate studies at Antioch College here in New Hampshire, sheep farming in Southern New Hampshire, Webster, New Hampshire Conservation Commission, adjunct professor at Revere University, co-founder, New Hampshire Wildlife Coalition. And I got to tell you, I try to save paper and try to save ink, but when I ever came across an interview that Camilla Fox had done of you, I printed it out. I thought this is my idea of summer reading. You know, I don't do big, long beach books. I try to read for relaxation, but this interview was done so well and is so information dense. I feel really thrilled to have you as our guest tonight and reading in here some of the different things that you've done and your relationship with these animals. And before we start, can you give the definitive answer? Is this a coyote or a coyote?
Well, east of the Mississippi, it's a coyote, unfortunately. And out west they say coyote, but I say coyote and coyote because it just depends on the sentence.
Gotcha. I was on a conservation walk today and we were at a habitat where some had been seen and the discussion began and I said, wait a minute, I can get this answer tonight. So I'll be able to go back and say, everyone's right. So thank you, Chris, and thanks for being our guest tonight. And we're thrilled to hear your program for us. Thank you.
You're welcome. So should I try to share my screen?
We use the word try around here because we know it's Zoom and the best laid plans can sometimes zoom north or zoom south. So I like how you say try and share your screen.
I know. I've been around on Zoom for a while.
Yes.
So, all right. So
it's looking good so far.
Okay, good.
We lost it.
Oh, I know it. Let me try this again. Screen share. I know. Okay. So share screen. Uh-oh. No, that's not going to work. Hold on just a sec. I don't know what happened to my program. It'll come back.
Not worried. And the best thing we can do at a time like this is just to sit quietly rather than try and babble, which can just be distracting to the person trying to find the right darn button. So we're rooting for you.
All right, great. I am so glad I'm feeling that wonderful vibe here. So now I need to find you all. So I've got my program on, but I don't seem, okay, here we go. So share screen, let's try it again. Share. Okay, slideshow, slideshow from beginning. Yay. Now, can you see that?
Looks good to me.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Mhm.
So I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about coyotes. For over 30 years, I've been talking about coyotes. And the fact that I was a sheep farmer for 18 of those years, I think really enhances my credentials. Forget, the master's degree and all that stuff. If you have sheep and you're living with coyotes that have dined on sheep prior, it makes you pay acute attention to the coyotes that you're living with. So I approach coyotes in a pragmatic way. I am, even though I graduated from Antioch, which is kind of a touchy-feely kind of place at times, Tom Wessels and Rick Vanderpool, they were real good mentors to me, and I hope made me a pretty good scientist. So I have never done a coyote program in 20 minutes. I had not even close. So I would just like to say that what you're going to see tonight is sort of a combination of things. And what I love to do most is go around and talk to groups of people, hopefully in person, hopefully soon. And so if any of you know of any groups looking for a speaker, I would love to be that person. So I represent New Hampshire and Vermont. I represent Project Coyote in New Hampshire and Vermont. And Chris, you know about Project Coyote. It's a national organization. And John Harrigan, who you may know, he is my dear friend. And he and I co-founded a group called the New Hampshire Wildlife Coalition. What we are is a group of natural resource professionals in one way or another. We have hunters and fishers. We have an ex-trapper, and any number of people actually that are outdoor oriented. And we have this single purpose, and that is a better conservation of predator species. No one else in the state is doing this. And so we're advocating for predators, and in a moment you will see why. We try to promote the fair chase ethos, and we try to do that by ending wildlife killing contests, which we have in this state, and ending coyote hunting during whelping season. Coyotes are the only predator that is not allowed really to have an unexploited whelping season. So we'd like to see that change. We're also great supporters of New Hampshire Fish and Game, and we would like to see the governance of wildlife in the state more broadly represented. In other words, instead of having a Fish and Game Commission comprised primarily of hunters and trappers, throw in some scientists there, throw in some outdoor recreation people, and let's have a little broader representation of New Hampshire on that commission. The steering committee is made up of Weldon Bosworth, Meade Caddo, who is a Harris Center person, Dana Erickson, who's an engineer for NASA, but also a sheep farmer, Jeff Jones, who's a forester, and Rick Vanderpool, who's a certified wetland scientist and all-around nature person. And Weldon, you may not know Weldon. He is a PhD ecology guy and a real good statistician. Weldon put together this text as part of his most recent testimony to the New Hampshire Fish and Game as they were completing their biennial rulemaking. And what he did was compile statistics from New Hampshire Fish and Game so that we could make very, very clear what is happening with so many of our fur bears out there. So you can see muskrats, 85% decline, same with mink, raccoons, 69%. Look at Fisher, they're in a 94% decline. and gray and red fox are also in trouble. The one fur bearer that doesn't seem to be in much trouble is the coyote. And the reason for that is, oddly enough, the heavier they're hunted, the faster they reproduce. So it's not surprising at all that even though they're hunted 365 days a year, there's still a ton of them out there, and there always will be. But these other fur bearers are in trouble. And we attempted to convince Fish and Game to stop the hunting of red and gray fox and fisher for a season or two and give them a chance to come back a bit, but they decided against that. And then when the Joint Legislative and Administrative Committee got together last week, they upheld Fish and Game's opinion. So very disappointing to us. As I said about coyotes, in my work, what we know is that the way coyotes are managed throughout the United States encourages their rapid reproduction. They have controls, biological controls that they can use and do use when they're not exploited. And we have seen this out in Yellowstone National Park, for example, that they can control their own population growth by being monogamous or by being having a very restricted estrus, a very restricted mating season, etc. And in my talk, I go into all this a little bit. But my work with coyotes over 30 years has really fallen on deaf ears at the government level. I'm still at it, and I'm still hoping that those people that support us will become active when we need them to, which will be in about another year. I wanted to talk a little bit about the coyote. The eastern coyote is an animal that is really specific to us here in the Northeast. It doesn't necessarily refer to all coyotes east of the Mississippi. So some coyotes have dog in them, some don't. All of them have wolf DNA, and the wolf involved in this is the eastern wolf up in Algonquin Park. So anywhere between 8 and 30% wolf, and yet 60 to 70% of the animal is still coyote. So to me, 35 years ago, I began my interest in wild canids with wolves, the gray wolf in particular. And then when I moved back east and I realized what we had in the woods, I became real intrigued with this animal for many, many reasons. Just north of us in Ontario and Quebec, all of the wild canids that are native to Ontario and Quebec and even further west have been hybridizing with one another, despite what our biology teachers taught us in sophomore year, that, in order to keep a species quote unquote pure, species are groups of individuals that mate only with one another to produce fertile offspring. Well, lo and behold, with wild dogs, they can mate with one another and produce fertile offspring and behaviorally mate as well. So you can have an eastern wolf mating with a gray wolf, and they become a monogamous pair and mate for life. You can have an eastern wolf mating with an eastern coyote. They become a monogamous pair and mate for life. It's quite astonishing. And so why are these animals mating with one another? They're not obeying Mrs. Cantrell, my sophomore year biology teacher. They don't seem to know the rules. Well, I think that there's a great advantage to hybridization. Hybrids tend to be, they essentially have more tricks up their sleeves. They've got a broader genetic base. When the environment changes, they are typically a little bit more adaptable and do better in an environment that's changing, which is the environment we're living in. I wanted to show you how the Western coyote found its way into the East. In my normal talk, I explain the factors that allowed coyotes to come in and settle here, but coyotes are our native song dog. We are the only country in the world to have coyotes. Some countries have dingoes, some have jackals, some have, you know, a variety of other wild dogs, but our wild dog is the coyote. And it is an animal whose original range was out west, right here, west of the Mississippi River. But by about 1900, their population began to explode because of a number of different factors, which I don't have time to go into now, but I would love to. And one of the big factors that helped the coyote, look at this range. This is the range of the coyote today. In 100 years, this animal went from occupying a fairly narrow range to occupying all of the 49 contiguous states up into Canada, Alaska, down through Central America. And the first coyote spotted in South America was tracked 2 years ago by a trail cam. An amazing thing. And in 100 years, our animal, this animal, eastern coyote, evolved from this western coyote, much smaller. This guy is about 25 to 30 pounds. Our guy here is 35 to 62 pounds. So in 100 years, this western coyote made it to the east, mated with the eastern wolf, became the eastern coyote, which by definition is a coyote plus wolf plus a dab of dog. So as the western coyote was coming east, it met up with the eastern wolf, which is now Algonquin Park wolf. If you don't know where the Algonquin Park is, it's in Western Ontario. It's a little bit southern and Western Ontario. It is a red wolf type. It looks very coyote-ish. You're probably saying to yourselves, I've seen coyotes that look like this. Yes, because the eastern wolf now has coyote DNA in it, just like our eastern coyote has eastern wolf DNA in it. So little western Wiley meets handsome eastern wolf and becomes this incredible eastern coyote. From the eastern wolf, our eastern coyote has inherited these traits: large size, and amazingly, the ability to live in packs like a wolf. And a behavioral change like this in 100 years is stunning. From the coyote, our eastern coyote has inherited its incredible adaptability and the fact that it is a responsive reproducer, meaning that when pack dynamics are changed, in other words, when there's a lot of hunting of a pack, they can respond reproductively with youngsters freed up to breed. So there's a lot to say about this animal. Most people want to know if in 100 years, our coyote has gone from, a 30-pound animal, the Western coyotes, 25 to 30 pounds. If it's gone up to 35 to 60 pounds, what is it going to be like? And does this coyote take deer? Yes, our coyote can pack up and take deer. What people want to know, what I think the coyote is going to become. This is a coyote from southern Canada, New Brunswick. I believe that this is an example of the F1 generation of the mating of an eastern wolf with an eastern coyote. These animals are big up there. Every year I take a group of people to Algonquin Park for a week of wolf tracking and coyote tracking. And it's an amazing trip if any of you want a really good adventure. And when we're up there, we see these really big coyotes. We don't see these coyotes here because by the time breeding and breeding and breeding has happened, we are looking at probably a 6th or 7th generation of the big eastern coyotes that live right outside of Algonquin Park that have bred, you know, right with an eastern wolf. So our guys, you know, 62 pounds is a pretty good sized dog. But so I think that the trajectory for our coyotes is to become larger. They have gotten substantially larger since they arrived in 1944. They have become more and more adept at taking deer. They are not impacting the deer herd. And in fact, a study that was done last year looked at the impact of coyotes on the deer herd throughout the entire Northeast. There's no impact that can be determined from coyotes. So even though coyotes take deer, they don't take many. They don't take enough to actually make an impact in the deer population. And that's bad news for farmers. It's bad news for foresters. It's bad news for small landowners that are trying to grow trees. Our coalition forester, Jeff Jones, is very upset about the deer damage in the forest over in Stoddard and has chronicled that damage. So, you know, all of us would like to see, we would like to see the Fish and Game recognize that we have a really valuable predator here that should be conserved in a more equitable way, in a more respectful way, really. Hunting it 365 days a year to us doesn't make any sense. And then the other point that I want to make is this. Yes, our coyotes take deer, but 2 years ago, a researcher from University of Trent up in Canada witnessed a pack of eastern coyotes taking down a moose, a 2-year-old moose. And so no one thought that that was likely to happen for decades. But in fact, with animals this big, and this is probably a 65-pound animal, would be my guess, with a pack of 4 of these animals and wolf DNA right in them, you know, taking down a moose, a healthy 2-year-old moose was staggering. So coyotes are here to stay. No amount of hunting will ever get rid of them. It's an animal we need to learn to live with. And I have a lot of ways for us to live with the coyote. Now, this is the end of my talk for tonight. I don't know how long I've been speaking. Did I do it in 20 minutes?
I can answer that in a different way. You did it as far as that clock time goes. We're at 7:51 now, so we do have more time for questions and answers. And if
Okay.
you had another segment you wanted to do, let's say for 5 minutes, we could do that and still have time for questions and answers, Chris. So
Oh, well, I would have to go back into my, you know, find another PowerPoint and that kind of thing. So
in that case, let's go with questions and answers, and we're going
Okay.
to keep you on our radar to invite you back. And I really appreciated you saying you were willing to do programs for other groups or other events. So we'll keep that on our radar too.
okay.
I have a quick question. Again, I'm interested in the semantics and the terminology and the language used. When people say they saw a coy dog, what are
Right.
they likely saying, or what does that word mean to you, or what can we learn?
It doesn't mean anything anymore. Initially, when this animal was first trapped, the trappers looked at it and thought that it looked like a cross between a coyote and a dog. And
Okay.
that's the origin of the term. The question is, can coyotes and dogs interbreed? Yes. because all dogs, except for, not foxes, even though foxes are Canidae, in the Canidae family, they're a different genus, the Urocyon instead of Canis. So apart from foxes, all dogs can interbreed. The fertile offspring thing is the issue when coyotes and dogs interbreed, and it doesn't happen often, but it does happen. Usually it's a male coyote and a female dog. Or even if it's the opposite, actually, the one that I saw, actually, some guy sent me a series of pictures of it, was his male lab breeding a female coyote that was in heat. And so she goes and digs a den and gives birth to a litter of coy dogs. But in order to feed herself, she has to leave that litter of pups unattended. And she could be gone for a day or two. And it's during that time that even a weasel could get into those pups and kill them all. But if say one of her pups does survive, that is half coyote and half dog. So it's twice as likely than a coyote to affiliate with people, and half as likely to be able to feed itself because it's a dog. So they're not a very successful animal. But the most important thing is that instead of coming into heat January to March, like coyotes do, just January to March, coy dogs tend to come into heat October, November. So the only animal they could ever possibly breed with in October, November are dogs. So the coy dog population is not something that can actually permeate the land as such. Do you see what I mean?
Thank you. No, that's a accessible answer. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions from people in this group present tonight?
I have a question. Chris,
Yes.
I'm a retired forester. I've been living in this area here for about 10 years. And when I first arrived, observation of scat and tracks was occasional. And then it looks like we became part of some families' territory because scat and tracks have gone way up in the last couple of years. And at the same time, we've lost our all our foxes that we observed in the past. The dens that I used to know about are gone. And this past winter, I found beaver hair in coyote scat. So it makes me think that part of that population change that you were showing, the decline of many of those species, may be actually due to the successful adaptation and spread of eastern coyote.
So that's interesting. If a coyote comes across a fox in its territory, it will try to kill the fox for sure. Gray fox, as you know, can climb trees. So, you can't blame coyotes for a decline in gray fox because coyotes really don't climb trees except for apple trees, which they love climbing. The red foxes have become much more habituated to people actually over the last 20 or 30 years because of the fear that they have of coyotes. So for the most part, people report to me that they're seeing more red foxes living very, very close by. And I say that's because, a little bit further out, there's a pack of coyotes. And I'll add to that, Steve, that every single one of us lives within the territory of a pack of coyotes. New Hampshire is pretty well saturated at this point with coyotes. We've got, the estimate is maybe 5,000 of them that live in the state. Nobody really knows because nobody's counting. But but the way that coyotes operate, most of them live in packs. And those packs have a territory, and our homes and farms and woodlands and everything are within the territory of a pack. And if you have enough land, you might be within the territory of 2 packs,
Oh.
which would be all the better, I think. Yeah. When I was a sheep farmer, and I'm not anymore, which is why I have a cheery voice. I don't have a flock of sheep on my mind all the time. When I was a sheep farmer, I had bought my farm specifically because of the coyote predation on it. And I wanted to run a long-term experiment to see if I could re-educate those coyotes to not eat sheep. And I knew it would have to be a generational change thing. But on average, coyotes live 4 years in the wild. So I knew that for 4 years, I had to keep those coyotes off my sheep, which I did. And then after that, I didn't have any trouble because the young had not grown up eating lamb. So it all worked out great. But what was really terrific, I thought, is that because they defend territory, they may have been keeping other coyotes off my farm as well in the process of defending their territory, which my farm was within. So, they were pretty helpful to me. I went a little bit further than your question asked, so I'm sorry.
Other questions or ideas? We've talked a little bit or heard from you a little bit about their dens, and heard from Steve Wingate about seeing some of them out through his job and profession and whatnot. One thing we haven't heard about, and maybe people know this and I don't, foxes have their little false dens. Do the coyotes have just one home and one nesting place like that, or do they make these other ones out around as like decoy dens from where the real pups are?
Yeah, I have never come across a situation like that, and I've never heard about that in literature. So when they dig a den on territory, sometimes they will clean out the same den from last year, or they'll use a porcupine den or whatever. Right now it's June already. Oh my God. So we're coming to the end of their denning season, and they only use the den to whelp their pups. So they're in the den, the mom and the pups are in the den for 6 to 8 weeks. And once the pups are weaned, they're moved from the den to another spot on territory. That den could be occupied by other critters, but the following year, she'll normally come back and see if the den is usable.
Interesting. Well, we are close to the end of what is an hour. I'm sure I'm not alone in thinking we could listen to more of this and whatnot. It's like our own private Nova or Discovery show, having these photographs and whatnot. Chris, truly, thank you. Any other questions or comments before Dick wraps it up and gives us highlights and showcase for next time? And again, we'll keep you on deck, Chris, because we all are connected to other groups that could find this interesting to have you as a program or as a presentation. Thank you.
That I would really appreciate that. My email is nhcoyotes@gmail.com. So
that's an easy one. Okay.
Easy to remember. And Dick, thank you so much for asking me to do the talk. Rick Vanderpool and Weldon Bosworth, both of them are really good speakers as well, but they would be talking about other aspects of conservation from our coalition. So if you have any further interest in hearing from them, they would love to do it as well.
Well, thank you very much.
Okay, well, thanks for having me.
We will have you come back again next year and go where we haven't gone before.
Oh, there's lots of places to go. Okay, thank you all.
Sure.
Before Chris goes,
Yeah.
I really look forward to hearing you at our regional meeting in November, where we're
Oh,
gonna do
good.
a lot more. And you mentioned John Harrigan, and he went to high school with me.
No.
Very familiar with him. And Rick Vanderpool has been really a principal asset to the Ringe Conservation Commission, which is another hat I wear.
Oh,
But-
interesting.
But I really think you've really hit a topic that has interest across a large spectrum of interest. And so I look forward to hearing more from you. Thank you very much.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate it. Okay, be well all.
Well, next month, we have Stephen Buckley from the New Hampshire Municipal Association to talk to us about the right to know law, which is something all our districts need to know. Or another title for the show would be how to avoid having quality time with the Attorney General. So it's designed to keep us out of trouble and for spending time with the Attorney General. Attorney Generals are nice when you have a problem for them to solve. When we are the problem that they are trying to solve, it becomes uncomfortable. So it's real important that we get as many conservation district supervisors here next month so that we can all go about our lives without having to spend time in Concord. So I guess we are done. So have a great evening.
Great to see you all. Be well. Thank you.
Good night, everybody.